Before we get started, you should probably know that the following podcast contains strong language and conversations of an adult nature. Also, it will almost certainly contain spoilers. Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Strong Language and Violent Scenes, the podcast giving a second chance to films that might not deserve them. I'm Mitch Bain, I'm a horror writer and an occasional doer of musical things.
And I'm Andy Stewart, I make disgusting films.
And joining us tonight, you know him best as the director of the Shudder exclusive film Ruin Me, it's Mr. Preston De Francis. Preston, hi.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, taking the time to come on and chat with us about,
a very interesting choice and a very timely choice.
Very timely.
Absolutely. I was really inspired when you guys reached out. It was right after the 20th anniversary of the release of Halloween H20.
Yep.
And on that day, you guys, I know you know Ryan Turek of the Shockwaves podcast an executive at Blumhouse. He's working on the new Halloween film, and he runs this event Slashback Video, and he had tweeted, I guess that August 5th was the 20th anniversary of Halloween H20 and the 30th anniversary of the remake of The Blob.
That's cool.
Okay. So he had tweeted back to back about both of those anniversaries. Okay. And to follow up on that tweet, he sort of he self-proclaimed he was going to be old man Turek for a second, and he was frustrated that The Blob had received some praise but not much response, and Halloween H20, the tweet about that, received tons of fair to negative comments.
Okay.
And I have always had a deep love for this movie for some reasons that I'm sure we'll get into as we're talking. And I have felt that pushback amongst fans and other filmmakers, and it's never something that I fully understood. And so I was happy to rewatch the film and try to look at it with fresh eyes, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it so we can try to work through all this together.
You may very well get some pushback tonight.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see how this pans out.
Preston, what we normally do lead with is just kind of like a little bit about kind of like your backstory with the film and kind of like why like you've got the affection for it that you do, kind of how you came across it and all that kind of thing. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I was growing up, I'm from this little town called Wheeling, West Virginia. So this is a town of about 30,000 people in an area of the states known as the Rust Belt, where it was once big economic centers, and it's been on a slow decline since the 60s, basically. So these are small towns, not a lot to do, and for a young kid like myself who loved movies, who loved horror movies, not a lot of direct opportunities to engage with that stuff.
Right.
So what I did is I would host movie marathons in my parents' basement.
Nice.
And we sort of settled into this groove where we would do different things all the time, but we had this tradition where every year in June we would watch all the Star Trek movies.
Right.
Every year in August we would watch all the Friday the 13th.
Okay.
And every year in October we would watch all the Halloweens.
Right.
And so this probably started when there were 5 Halloween movies.
Okay.
I would watch the first 5, and then the 6th was added, and we would watch the 6th. By the time Halloween H20 came out, that was around the time that I was graduating from high school. But I was still doing these movie marathons. So I had a huge love and respect for the franchise. So this was 1998. This was when the internet was first starting. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would frequent the sites about these movies. And I believe it was a site that still exists today, HalloweenMovies.com, was sort of the imminent Michael Myers resource on the internet at the time. Very primitive stuff. And they somehow had worked out a thing with the studio where they encouraged people to do opening night parties to celebrate Halloween H20.
Okay.
And if you signed up to be a host of a party in your city, they would send you some free stuff, some free giveaways to like give out to other people who came to the party.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I logged on and I was going to sign up to be the host of the party in my little town of Wheeling, West Virginia. And I was shocked to see that someone else had already signed up.
Oh, okay.
You sucked.
I was like, this is crazy. There's like, in this tiny town, somebody else is a big enough fan of this. So I reached out to that person and I was like, hey, let's do it. Let's do this opening of my party. I'm excited. And he was like, yeah, this is going to be cool. And then, a few weeks went by and he wrote me back. He emailed me back and said, no one else has written to me. So it would just be us two guys looking at each other. So how about this? They sent me the free giveaways. Meet me at the screening and I'll give you I'll give you some of the stuff they gave,
Okay.
And so I saw Halloween H20 on opening, I believe it was a Friday night, in the 7:00 slot in my tiny hometown, but it was a packed audience. And I met up with this gentleman whose name escapes me now, and I still have it. The giveaway was a piece of film from the movie,
Right, okay.
and a little piece of the film, and I still have it and I treasure it.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's one of the best backstories that we've heard, I think.
I think so.
Hell yeah.
So when you were talking about the other guy, I was really hoping that you were going to be like, and that man was Ryan Turek.
I wish the story had that cool twist. Hey, maybe it was, and I just didn't know it.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe that's the name that's escaping me right now. Who knows?
Uh-huh.
But I was also hoping that it was one of the guys from your kind of horror movie marathon nights had gone off on his own and tried to start like a splinter group.
I love the storytellers in you guys. You want the plant and the payoff. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, this is cool because obviously, this is coming from so obviously you've chosen this film, which has kind of got a middling reception over the years, but it's coming from someone who obviously has kind of like a fairly rich heritage with the franchise and a lot of affection for what came before.
As do I. I have a rather large Michael Myers on my forearm.
Excellent.
But certainly, yeah, I also have a great love for the franchise. I'll get into where I fall down on Halloween H20, obviously, as we progress. Suffice to say, at this point, I have a massive love for the franchise.
Now, one thing that we do every week, and I know that you've listened to a couple of episodes, Preston, so you might know what's coming next, but every now and again, people listen to this show without having seen the films. Obviously, we generally recommend that people do, but sometimes people do, and that's fine. But what we do now is we put 30 seconds on the clock and give you that 30 seconds to relay your best attempt at a potted synopsis of the film.
And you want it's not just a log line, you want beginning, middle, and end, the whole thing.
As much as you can feasibly fit into 30 seconds.
Yeah, certainly, like, you don't have to see it right to the conclusion, but as much scene setting as you can do.
Yes.
So if I count you in, you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Dr. Loomis, the doctor who cared for Michael Myers, his nurse's studio is robbed, and it seems that Michael Myers is responsible because he's looking for Laurie Strode. We cut to Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, but now she's taken on the persona of Carrie Tate, where she is the head of a posh school in Northern California. Her son has recently celebrated his 17th birthday, which was the age Laurie was when...
Time.
Oh.
No! Wow.
Oh,
that was brutal.
30 seconds is short.
Yep.
That is short.
I've been on the receiving end of this, and it is quite difficult.
It is quite difficult. I did terribly.
I was going to say,
that's...
that wasn't in our best attempts, unfortunately, Preston.
Right, let's jump into this thing.
Let's.
So, straight in, we're in Langdon, Illinois.
Yes.
We find this out in intertitle form. October 29th, 1998. Now, as you said, it's the nurse.
Yeah. Same nurse. Nurse Marion, played by Nancy Stevens. She obviously is the nurse in the car at the very beginning of John Carpenter's Halloween. And
also in Halloween 2.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, she is still a nurse. She's moved on to caring for Dr. Loomis, who has now sadly departed this mortal coil, as we know. However, she's kept his room exactly the same, kind of like a weird shrine.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
so it's a weird shrine, but it provides perfect the opportunity for the camera to catch all the details for anyone who hasn't seen the other Halloween movies, so we can get caught up. So this shrine is the perfect source of exposition for the audience.
Absolutely, and that the whole room pretty much is showed to us in montage over the credits with some pretty heavy-handed Donald Pleasance dialogue.
It's not, in fact, that is a sound-alike. That is not Donald Pleasance actually giving that dialogue.
I am being schooled.
So I guess they couldn't find a clean recording of that dialogue, so they brought in a sound-alike to mimic.
Well, that's a pretty good job.
It is.
It's a pretty good job. But the film kicks off with and I'll talk more about this because it irritates me in the whole franchise. Pumpkin getting stabbed with the biggest butcher knife you've ever seen in your life. The whole franchise is plagued with ridiculously oversized kitchenware.
Why would you have a knife that size if you weren't just going to use it to murder someone?
Yeah.
I guess movies are better than life. That's the thing. That's the thing that you got to remember, that the Halloween franchise is not a reflection of life. It's better than our lives.
It's also larger in every sense of the word, larger than life in every respect.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but yeah, it's something that annoys me in all the films.
But yeah, we've got the nurse. I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Marion,
thank you. Coming home, and you get kind of like a pretty good bit of like 90s foreboding when she turns up and the smashed porch light and the shot of the foot and the smashed glass and stuff sets the scene kind of nicely. And she, like, reasonably savvy, doesn't go straight in there.
Well, you think if you've got a shrine to Michael Myers in your house, you're probably a little bit alert.
It's like it's kind of it's a little bit smarter than, because when you see something like this in a horror film, you kind of assume that they're going to blunder straight in there.
And while she doesn't blunder straight in, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's about to.
Yes. So I think that both of the things you just said point to this movie being a direct progeny of Scream. So I think a pre-Scream slasher movie, she would have gone right in. Also in a pre-Scream slasher movie, you wouldn't have had Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
True. Yeah.
So this is like we're showing that the characters are now smarter, and we also have Joseph Gordon-Levitt because now we're casting TV actors in our slasher movies. So really a product of its time. And as I'm sure you guys know, this movie wouldn't have existed if it hadn't been for the huge success of Scream. It was, and I think just right there you see how Scream impacted slasher movies with those two things.
Absolutely. So they go next door. Really funny bit of dialogue.
Okay.
In here, I thought, and I believe it's Marion that's smoking in the house.
Yep.
And Joseph Gordon-Levitt's kind of like sidekick friend. I'm pretty sure it's him. He's like, "Oh, hasn't anyone told you that secondhand smoking kills?" And Marion's like, "Yeah, they're all dead."
Okay.
It's a great joke. But so Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes in there like kind of hockey stick in hand, kind of doing that classic talking non-specifically to the person hiding in the house thing. He meets it's off camera, but I'm not gonna lie. I mean, pretty gruesome death for what's effectively a child character.
Yeah. Something I've always liked is that he steals her beer and then wrecks her kitchen and blames it on the burglar or the perceived burglar. Yep.
Again, very, very Scream-like touches, very, where these characters are snarky and clever and not just bumbling straightforward, but having sort of a take of their own on the things that are happening.
I get. You seem to be quite knowledgeable about this. Was there not some involvement from Kevin Williamson in this?
Yes, he did. He did a rewrite of the script. The original writer that they had hired, they were planning it originally to be like a B movie sequel. They were going to do like direct to video or a small theatrical release, and that original writer, once they got Jamie Lee Curtis, rewrote it to add the character. And then I think they brought in Kevin, who was, of course, the hottest horror comedy writer at the moment. At that moment, to punch it up.
Speaking of Scream, obviously the writer of Scream.
So Preston, obviously rewriting it to bring Jamie Lee Curtis and Laurie into it is, when you consider the film that we ended up getting, kind of it must have had a pretty seismic impact on the story as it was, because obviously she kind of becomes a central character. Do you have any idea what it was originally?
He said that it was set at the girls' school, or it was an all-girls school that was the setting, and there was a copycat Michael Myers killer, and that was revealed to have been. This is how far down the road they got on this. That the nerd character, Charlie, I think his name is.
Yeah.
That guy was cast to play that character, and he was going to be revealed to be a Michael Myers copycat killer.
Oh, right.
And then the real Michael Myers came back and dispatched him. All of this information comes from the Scream Factory release of Halloween H20. There's an hour-long making of documentary, which is great. So check that out if you want the prime source for these cool tidbits.
Oh, that is interesting.
That is good.
Yeah,
definitely.
Wow, pretty huge turnaround. Eventually we do lose Marion in what is a pretty credible struggle on her part, but also from an effects perspective, a pretty good throat slash, I think.
Mm-hmm.
People always put up a good fight against Michael. He's forever getting hit with stuff and stabbed and shot, and people generally put up a decent fight against him.
I think that's one of the things that's cool about him is that he has maintained a little bit of the humanity that he maybe can be hurt, unlike, some of the later Jason stuff, where he's utterly unstoppable. It feels like maybe you actually have a chance against Michael.
Yeah, there's a fallibility to him.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice.
It's actually, I hadn't considered that at all, but actually that is really uncommon, isn't it? And I think that the fact that he keeps the fact that obviously like most of the time he kind of powers through makes him look more indomitable as well.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning at this point, and I know you mentioned that Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets killed off, but he gets an ice skate in the face, which is a lovely little gag, which you don't see, sadly. It would have been nice to have seen it. But still looks pretty good, holds up.
Yep, agreed.
Also worth mentioning, Steve Miner, the director on this, he's got a bit of a slasher movie. He's got some real slasher movie credentials behind him. I believe he did parts 2 and 3 of Friday the 13th.
He did. He absolutely did.
So this isn't his first rodeo.
Yeah, it is not. He had some good street cred coming in.
But a far less of a body count than those other
far
films.
Less of a body count, for sure. And I know that that's one of the issues that a lot of people have with this movie is the body count is pretty small. And as you mentioned, some of it is even off screen, like the Joseph Gordon-Levitt ice skate to the face.
7 kills, 2 off screen.
Wow.
That's
small.
That's your final score right there.
I don't understand the kind of the animosity or the disparagement people have for off-camera kills, though, because I think that the reveal can be just as good or just as jarring or just as shocking.
I would agree.
And I think that the 1-2 punch that you get here of her finding Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character with the ice skate through his face and then immediately opening the door and the other guy just immediately falling in and landing on her, I think that that is as effective, if not more, so than if you'd seen the two of them get murdered.
Yeah, true, because we experience it more from, we're grounding that whole opening sequence from Marion's perspective.
Yes.
And so would it have felt it would have felt kind of cheap if we had cut away and seen those deaths from, I guess, Michael's perspective, from the characters themselves' perspective. So keeping us with her, I think it's a more mature artistic choice.
I agree. I think that's fair. And then after the credits, which as we discussed is kind of an exposition bomb.
Well, while the credits are rolling, let's take a minute to discuss the cast in this, because it's a pretty packed cast.
It's an interesting cast, for sure.
Recognisable people, and frankly, some of them quite famous now.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Kevin Williamson, in addition to writing Scream, was the creator of Dawson's Creek, and we have Michelle Williams in the cast, who now is, of course, an art house darling, but at the time, she was, Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was very struck watching this time by how much Dawson's Creek DNA I felt in the movie. Through Michelle Williams, but then also through some of that Kevin Williamson dialogue, because if you remember, the thing that everybody talked about with Dawson's Creek was, oh, the teenagers are talking in this super heightened way with this crazy sophisticated vocabulary. And you see that in this movie. And when we get, I noted a couple of my favorites when we get to them.
Oh, cool. Okay.
We also have, we've got Jodi Lyn O'Keefe in there as well. And Adam Han-Bird, obviously, who was, he plays Charlie. He was in like Little Man Tate and Jumanji. You've got LL Cool J.
Yes. Rapper LL.
Elevating things immensely. He's brilliant in this. He cracks me up.
Yeah, he is great. Yeah. We can get to that, but he is. And also, and introducing Josh Hartnett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I love the moment when LL Cool J tells him to comb his hair. Yeah. It's like he's speaking for all of us.
He does have ridiculous hair. And
he does.
It must be a different time. It's definitely a different time, but he's rocking a pretty strong monobrow game. You wouldn't get away with that now. You wouldn't be allowed that.
I think that, like, obviously, post credits, you kind of get your first look at Josh Hartnett's character John,
in the biggest shot you've ever seen.
I was gonna say, it's just everything about it is just it's the most 1998 aesthetic ever, just in hair and in his giant shirt and like stuff.
Yeah. Now I gotta take just 1 second to talk about one other thing that happens during the credits.
Oh yeah, okay.
The rearrangement that John Ottman did of the John Carpenter Halloween score.
Oh, yeah.
The huge orchestral version of that. I just worship it. I think it's so cool. It takes what we love and is familiar about it and makes it epic and huge.
We actually, me and Andy watched this together a couple of days ago, and Andy, you commented on that as well, actually, didn't you? That's in like I think the score all the way through, especially the kind of recurrences of the Carpenter stuff and the way that it's reworked, is all really good.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so we meet Josh Hartnett at this point, or John, should I say?
Yeah.
Who's having a disagreement with his mum.
Yeah,
Laurie?
we'll call her Laurie for the sake of argument, but she's obviously going by a different name, as we know. She is in hiding, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're discussing basically whether or not he's going to go to
Yosemite. Yeah, there's a school trip. He's not allowed to go because she's...
And the other piece of information, which is really key, that is planted here, that we'll come back to later, is the fact that it was just recently his 17th birthday.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's is important. That is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, because I remember when we were watching this, I thought, like, the way that John talks to Laurie, he's being kind of, like, pretty rude and pretty kind of angry and stuff, but I think that the way that his character is written is probably a reasonable representation of a kind of frustrated teenager kind of thing, because obviously you can, like, you're getting this read pretty early on that he's had this kind of sheltered existence, and it's because of this kind of protective thing from Laurie, because what seems like it's kind of informed by her experiences. And I think that when you're watching this as an adult, you're like, wow, he's being kind of, like, pretty aggressive and pretty rude and stuff, but also you think about what you were like as a teenager, it's probably a reasonably convincing and a kind of like fairly grounded depiction of what a teenager would be like in that situation.
Yes, and in fact, this is one of my Dawson's Creek style lines here. He says, "Your overprotection and paranoia is inhibiting my growth process."
Yep, there we go. There's the first one.
Yep.
Yeah,
good one.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, that's.
I am so happy you wrote that down.
My mum would have told me to fuck off if I'd said that to her.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's inhibiting my growth process. Fantastic. Then at this point you kind of get kind of like crash coursed in all your kind of main protagonists.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And obviously you meet Michelle Williams. She's the girlfriend of John,
Molly.
Josh Hartnett, Molly. Thank you. And Charlie, Adam Han-Bird, and Jodi Lyn O'Keefe are also a couple. Not the most believable on-screen couple I've ever seen.
Yeah, I had a note about that here, actually. He seems to be coded as, a nebbishy, milquetoasty nerd.
Yeah.
And she's quite beautiful and glamorous. And she just seems really, really taken with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish that was how secondary school had been for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because he's doing well. So this is a kind of interesting thing, or it kind of sows some seeds for something that's going to be interesting later, when they're kind of talking about the fact that for whatever reason, none of the four of them can go on the Yosemite trip.
Well,
So
that's
they're
not
kind of
that's not strictly true.
okay.
It's not that none of the four of them can go. They, with the school being empty, they want the time to themselves to run wild. And I think at one point Charlie says something about orgiastic rituals or something like that. I don't know, something stupid along those lines.
Right,
but,
yes.
I think they're planning some kind of big, sweaty, drunken fuckfest.
I like the fact that that's obviously, but it sows the seed for the fact that they're doing this as an alternative to going to Yosemite, but also like eventually, obviously later, and it's jumping ahead a little bit, but Laurie kind of relents and tells him he can go, and at that point he doesn't like. At that point, the alternative plan that they come up with has kind of cemented itself, and he doesn't really want it.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of interesting because it's like obviously it's the first time that she's kind of caving and trying to trust him with something, and he kind of doesn't know what to do with it.
And he could have gone, but part of the draw of him going was that his friends were going and his girlfriend was going. And now they're staying. He was never going to go the minute that piece of information's offered up. It would have been funny if he'd just gone, but he doesn't.
But was not to be. We needed an excuse to get the school cleared out so that we could have only our protagonists and not pay for all those extras.
Yes.
See, that is just so much so the reality of the situation. I feel like I'm impossibly giving it too much credit by talking about it as this kind of like smart, kind of savvy narrative device. But maybe it's both.
In Jason Takes Manhattan, you see the ship that they're on going to Manhattan really, really early on, and it's absolutely fucking jam packed with people. There's hundreds of people on there, and then you've got the same 8 people for the rest of the film. So you have to assume then that everyone else. Hundreds of people die on that boat.
And they do have a throwaway line that it was like, oh yeah, they were all in the mess hall and it flooded or something. God. So yeah, I guess they did, but
massacre.
So some other really good stuff that starts coming in here is Laurie's backstory. Yeah. And we learn that she's keeping a lot of secrets, right? So she's keeping a secret. She's got the relationship with Adam Arkin, the guidance counselor, right? Which is sort of a secret, because they're professional colleagues. We have the secret that she has the past with Michael Myers, which she, it seems like she doesn't share that with anyone outside of her and her son. Yep. And then her big secret is, one of the ways she's dealing with her post-traumatic stress disorder is that she's an alcoholic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I have always had and still have a lot of respect for that character work they did with that character and giving her so many different secrets that she's dealing with, but all rooted in her experience with Michael Myers 20 years prior.
That I had not considered, but you're right. They do a lot of building on a kind of a fairly iconic character in a very short window of time in a way that feels fairly grounded and fairly convincing.
Yes, like think about the scene where she asks for the second glass of Chardonnay from the waiter, and he has that look where he clocks that she's already got one, and she says today. He brings her one. It just does feel very authentic.
Yeah,
absolutely spot on.
No, I totally agree. And on obviously we're shooting through kind of like quite a lot of big character introductions. One of my favorites here shortly after.
A character we haven't touched on at all is Norma. Norma, the secretary.
Yes,
played by Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. Janet Leigh, who obviously, as we also going back to the name Marion, famously was Marion Crane in Psycho.
Absolutely, and we have all kind of cool, well, debatably cool in-jokes here. At one point, she has the car that she drove in Psycho.
Named after Norman Bates' mother.
Yep, absolutely. We hear some notes from the Psycho theme there. She even has a line where she says, "Let me be maternal for a moment."
I love when the notes from Psycho come in.
Yes, me too.
I think that's a lovely little touch. And less obvious than the car and the name and all the other stuff.
Right. Which some of that stuff, this time watching it, I felt like it took me out of the narrative a little bit.
Oh, really?
I was seeing them wink too hard. When her name was Norma, when she said the thing about being maternal for a second, I was like, I feel like maybe you're winking too hard at me, and I'm not watching a story. I'm watching I'm watching you guys be meta right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
We know she was in Psycho. We don't need to be kind of bludgeoned with it.
Right.
I think like you've named maybe three or four ways that they kind of touch on that, and maybe it's the kind of thing where all of those things are kind of like fairly smart and fairly funny, like touches on their own, but maybe you could have just chosen one.
Yeah. Yes.
Personally, I would have gone for the music cue because I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's lovely.
But yeah, so, like, we do meet LL Cool J's character just around this time. The school security guard is his position, I believe. One of my favourite kind of like running jokes and things they call back to in this is him kind of working in the office and reading back the erotic fiction to his wife.
That
he's
That's
writing.
amazing.
I thought it's hilarious.
It's a fun little run, and it has a nice little arc. You know, it ends up at the end that, you know, this experience has now informed his art and his career as a writer, and we can only assume that, you know, that this next novel is gonna be a success.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, when he's talking to his wife and he says that he's gonna write like a sexy thriller.
Yeah.
Yes.
She is an incredibly strong black stereotype. The girlfriend on the phone.
She is
like a bit like
that's very of its time though, isn't it?
A bit like Jada Pinkett in Scream 2. But I mean, she sounds just like the old woman in the Tom and Jerry cartoons. That's kind of how heavy it's played. Doesn't sit the best for me.
Like,
yeah, I feel you.
I think it's, but like I say, I think that's one of those things where it's like if that occurred in a film in 2018, you would call it. But I think when you're watching it for something in 1998, you kind of like you make a little bit of a concession for the fact that a lot of those kind of characters hit those kind of beats pretty hard.
Right. And in fact, in that behind the scenes doc I mentioned, the reason that LL Cool J's character existed is that it was all market research. They had done market research that African American audiences really responded to the character of Michael Myers, so they created an African American character. And hopefully, although who knows, but hopefully today, you know, we're not responding to marketing research in that way in our art, but maybe people still are, but hopefully not.
Yeah, no, ideally you'd hope not. Yeah, I think that Adam Arkin is doing a lot of good stuff in this film.
Does he remind anyone else of George Clooney?
Preston?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a softer, paunchier George Clooney. Yes. But yes, for sure.
Like, he's your dad and George Clooney's your sexy uncle that comes round riding a motorbike.
That's a great comparison.
And a totally unexpected use of the expression "sexy uncle." Thank you for that.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to get here.
Yeah, I think like when you see her kind of interacting with him, and you can kind of see in ways that aren't obvious to him that she's kind of obviously incredibly haunted by the experience. And I think that in ways he won't fully understand until later. And it's around this time as well that she has this kind of like extended altercation with Josh Hartnett, kind of in the street after they've kind of snuck out and things. And I think that again you get a reasonable grounding in their relationship at this point, because it's like, I mean, I think it's kind of alluded to first time around when they're arguing. They're considerably more on the nose in this one about the fact that he is very aware of the fact that what had happened to her 20 years previous is informing her parenting and therefore his life in a way that he's finding really kind of problematic.
And this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think Jamie Lee is a movie star for a reason, and she's just doing such good work in that scene that we believe it. We see both sides. It's a tough situation that she's dealing with, and we feel for them both.
Yeah, I think that the Josh Hartnett stuff here is really good as well, because he's being really overdramatic. From again, if you're watching this back with an adult's head on, he looks like he's being really melodramatic. I wrote down that he's like, "Oh, I can't live like this" kind of thing. It's probably like a fairly solid bit of kind of teen character stuff.
Oh yeah, it's very very angsty, very very stroppy, very accurate.
Yeah,
that was very much what I was like.
Yep, me too.
Still am. So sorry, Mum.
So it's around here that we get the kind of scene setting for the Halloween party and stuff at this point, don't we? Like,
yeah, everything's going well at this point until I heard the music of Creed.
Oh man, okay. So I will defend a lot of things about this movie. I think we've just gotten to the what we say as a bridge too far.
Yeah.
I cannot in good conscience say that the music of Creed is a welcome addition to the Halloween franchise.
Or
twice.
Or anything.
It's worth noting, not once, but twice.
Yep. And a big I think they play that whole song over the closing credits. So oh boy.
Which baffles me, because they play the whole song and then you get about 20 seconds of that really awesome reworking of the Halloween theme.
Mm-hmm,
when they could have just blasted that out over the whole thing.
But again, that's
it's a time thing.
It's playing into the kind of the slashers you were getting at the time.
I believe
it's like if this had been made in 2003 or something, it would have been Static X.
I think Sidney Prescott has a Creed poster in her bedroom.
Oh man, that's no good.
If I remember correctly.
A lot of things I like about Sidney Prescott, but her taste in alt rock, not so much.
Not so much. One other thing to mention here is the classroom scene, which is sort of a callback to the original Halloween classroom scene, where they using a piece of literature, they articulate the theme of this movie. And they say that Victor should have confronted the monster sooner. And this is something that we see fairly often in movies. We saw just earlier this year in Hereditary, in fact, where a classroom scene, they're studying a novel, and they use that to articulate the themes of the movie that we're watching. I don't know if here it's as successful as it is in Halloween 1. I feel like in Halloween 1, the idea of fate never changes is a little bit... There's something that's a little more open to interpretation of how you read that in Halloween 1. Mm-hmm. Here, we're pretty much spelling out exactly what this movie is about, being that, Victor should have confronted the monster sooner. Laurie should have confronted Michael Myers sooner, So it's a little on the nose for my taste in this time watching it through, but I'm curious to know what you guys think about that.
I did spot this. Yeah. And I would be inclined to agree with you. I think that and you're right in as much as I think that not even kind of as well as just kind of a classroom scene where someone is going through a piece of literature that reflects the themes of the film you're watching, but also the use of the kind of someone seeing something untoward from a classroom window that's there then gone. Yeah. Like that's super recurrent as well in a lot of the kind of slashers and horror films that followed afterwards, because that got touched on obviously that It Follows. Yeah, use that things like that.
I also have a slight problem with the fact that it's Jamie Lee Curtis delivering all this stuff. I know she's clearly, obviously, she's some kind of teacher as well as being the head mistress or something. I don't know. Yeah, but I think if it was just a teacher, just some Joe Schmo, somebody like a Lynn Shay that they've drafted in to be this teacher, right? I would have a lot less of a problem with it, I think, than it actually being Jamie Lee Curtis beating us over the head with this metaphor.
Yep, that's fair.
Nice little nod to Young Frankenstein, though.
Yes, when she says Frankenstein, guys. Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that I did kind of start to find kind of irksome about this film as it went on was
here we go.
I think that an awful lot of fake out jump scares.
Yeah,
the fake out to real ratio is possibly about 3 or 4 to 1, I would say, and I think after a while that kind of started to wear on me a little bit. Yep. And around this part, I also started to notice the way they stage Michael Myers is not particularly scary. Felt a number of times, especially when he was like sort of stalking around LL Cool J.
Yeah,
he would kind of like walk under frame. He would like hit a mark, and like the music would be scary for a second, and LL would turn around and he would be gone, and then he would hit another mark. And the music would be scary. And it's very different than the way he's treated, especially in the original Halloween, where he's just sort of watching you. And the creepiness is that he's standing there watching you. He doesn't like hit a mark, and then we hit a scary cue when the Michael Myers actor hits a mark. There's something about that staging that just it didn't sit particularly well with me on this view.
I completely agree. I I didn't look at it alongside how they frame him in the first film, but you're 100% right. I think that half the reason of why he's so scary in the 78 film is because he's so kind of static and kind of like, and you kind of get the impression that he's observing rather than stalking, and I think that is way scarier. But I actually had that written down in my notes as well, that I thought that this scene where he's kind of stalking LL Cool J is actually like, it's actually really funny, you know, because I was just like when he appears at two different windows in the same.
It's also yeah. It's not helped by the fact that LL Cool J is reading his book that he's writing to his girlfriend over the phone, and he's hitting out the lines like, "I want to invade every part of your being," and Michael's just kind of standing awkwardly, looking in the window at him.
Yeah, fair.
It feels silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, but I think I agree. I think that some of the ways that he's framed at a few different junctures in the film lack the kind of ominousness and the kind of like the foreboding of what came before.
Mm-hmm.
He's also rocking two very slightly different masks.
Oh yes, so the mask, man. I've seen so much controversy on the internet about the mask in this movie. Yeah, I guess they really had a lot of problems figuring out how to get that classic look. It fit differently on the actor's face. The director had a different vision. And at a certain point, the studio they had shot a bunch, and the studio finally caught up with watching the dailies and hated the mask. So they had to change the mask partway through. And it does feel like in this movie, they never really get the mask right. And that's a shame. It's not a movie killer for me. I feel like for some people, it's a cardinal sin that they can't get past. I agree. It's unfortunate, but I'm willing to sort of just imagine the proper mask in my mind's eye when I watch it.
That's also as well.
I mean, what's your take on that, Andy? Like, is that like is the mask inconsistency thing something that it's like how much does it take you out?
It doesn't take me out of it. Well, the mask inconsistency as it stands within the film, because there's clearly two different masks, takes me out of it slightly. On the whole, if you look at part 6, the mask's fucking terrible in part 6.
Yeah.
In fact, kind of part 4, 5, and 6, the mask's fucking dreadful.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is, for me, on the whole, is actually a step up and an improvement on those masks. Within the film, I find myself noticing the mask, but it doesn't. I'm not overly bothered by it, but it's noticeable.
I would say I'm probably in a similar boat. It's noticeable, but it's not a problem. And I think that, like you say, Preston, I think that it's also quite easy to just mentally substitute in the right thing.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't advocate doing for, like, a multitude of sins, but I think for something like this, I think you can do that quite easily, really.
Yeah.
It takes a pretty meaty nosedive again in Halloween Resurrection.
It does.
In fact, everything takes a pretty big nosedive in Halloween Resurrection.
Yeah, we can
touch on that at the end, towards the end of this.
We can get to that for sure.
Also, another thing I like, another kind of callback to the original film. Sorry, Mitch, another fake out jump scare involving Norma this time, when she delivers Sheriff Brackett's line from the first film, which is, "It's Halloween, everyone's entitled to one good scare." I always think that's quite nice. But again, it's very blunt.
And I was struck by so many meta things that I was taken out of it. You know, they are watching Scream 2.
That's
and
right,
if you remember in Scream 1, they're watching Halloween 1.
That's right.
At one point, Laurie says, drive down to the Mackenzies. Or no, she says drive down the street to the Beckers, which is a reference to Scream 1. The name of Drew Barrymore's family was the Beckers. And in the scene in Scream 1, they say drive down the street to the Mackenzies, which is a reference to Halloween. It's like this huge circle of references and pointing at each other, which I start to feel like I'm out of it because I'm watching the references, watching the movie.
Was it only on this watch that started to become a problem for you?
I think so. I think so. It like I think when I watched it when I was younger, I was like, "Ooh, cool! Such a cool in joke. They're so smart. It's so inside." And now I think that my palate has matured. I don't know if that's the right word, but has gotten older. I find that the clever. I'm not getting a jazz out of the cleverness of that, and I'm finding it less clever as I get older, I guess.
I've got another one, by the way.
Oh yeah.
The little girl in the toilet cubicle earlier on is called Casey.
And Drew Barrymore's character was Casey
Becker. Yep. There we go.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty important stuff incoming here, which is when Laurie kind of like gives her real backstory and kind of the truth about her history and her affiliation with Michael Myers to Adam Arkin's character. I think it's an important scene to have in there, and it's good to see how his character understands that and things. But the way it's presented is baffling to me. When it's kind of done in the middle of this kind of like things are getting kind of hot and heavy,
and a kind of opener to coitus.
Yeah, and then she kind of out of nowhere kind of like always like for some reason thinks that then is the right time to kind of get into this unbelievably harrowing story about where she's come from and all these things that she's dealt with. And that's
going to throw cold water on the coals for sure.
Absolutely,
like.
I think it's like it's a really really weird choice, but I think that Adam Arkin does a reasonably good job with it.
He plays it kind of tongue in cheek. He plays it with a bit of humour until she's pointedly saying to him, "I'm not fucking kidding here."
Yeah,
he's still...
it is an odd way to stage that scene, you know, because up to then I thought Adam Arkin was such a well drawn character, but then the way he reacts, it's like I know that she's being serious and he's not taking it seriously for so long, and we're like, wait a minute, is he actually an asshole? And yeah, it's odd. I'm not gonna lie, it's odd.
Yeah, I think it's one of the only moments in there that I found kind of like out and out kind of baffling.
It's very dismissive. He seems very focused on what they were there to do.
But to be fair, from Laurie's side of it, it's a weird time. It's a weird time to do that, and I think that
for sure.
You know, put yourself in his shoes. It's like, I mean, I would be kind of baffled by it, but I'd be like, is this part of it? I don't know.
So now, if you're listening, you might be thinking, I thought this was a fucking slasher film, and we've not talked about really anyone dying for probably about half an hour. You get a good you get a hot streak. You get 2 pretty quick back-to-back deaths.
And I think they're pretty good. Yeah. I really like the tension around the corkscrew set piece. And then the moment with the dumbwaiter when Michael cuts the cord of the dumbwaiter and grabs her leg, and the makeup there is you really feel it, you know?
Yeah, the leg break when the dumbwaiter falls on her leg as she's kind of trying to get out from underneath Charlie, whose corpse is in the dumbwaiter. I
was going to say, just for clarity, these are the deaths of Charlie and Sarah. Yes, Sarah's death's horrific. I think it's my favorite one in there. I think that the dumbwaiter sequence and the aftermath of the injury is really really horrible.
Mm-hmm. Now, around here is where we have something that really struck me this time.
Okay.
So in that scene when Laurie confesses everything to Adam Arkin, mm-hmm. she tells part of the backstory is Michael Myers, as a boy, killed my older sister mm-hmm. when she was 17.
Yes.
Okay. Then Adam Arkin says, well, how old were you when he came after you? And she says, I was 17. Then this makes a little light bulb go off in Laurie's head. She sees the birthday card for her son, that he's also 17. And that's what makes her kick into high gear and go, Michael is coming.
Yeah. So
just for a second, I want to articulate very clearly the narrative pill that they're asking us to swallow here. And that narrative pill is this, that Michael Myers has an internal clock, and when anyone he's related to turns the age of 17, he says, I'm going to kill that person. That is the idea that they're putting forward, is that he has some sense that tells him when his relatives turn 17, he's going to kill them.
I just want to take a step back here, right? Go away back to Marion's house, back to Dr. Loomis's room in Marion's house, right?
Yeah.
The Laurie Strode file has been stolen by Michael.
Yeah.
It's a medical report, presumably about her mental state, what she's up to.
Yep.
Surely it would in no way include the date of birth of her son, who Michael has never met, presumably doesn't know anything about.
Couldn't pick out from a lineup. No way.
No.
That is just such a good observation, purely from the perspective of the fact that when that happened, and she was like, 17, I was like, oh my god, and I just did that.
Yeah.
Like, I just, like when you're asking about, like, the narrative pill to swallow, I swallowed it immediately and without question, and now I feel quite foolish.
But here's the thing. I swallowed it for 19 years without question. And until this most recent viewing, I said, wait a minute.
Because it's an arbitrary thing as well, because it's not like it's happening in 17-year cycles. Like, Laurie had John when she was 17, so now it's 17 years later, he'll be turning 17. There's none of that. Like,
nope.
Absolutely none of that. There's no rhyme or reason or sense to it at all. It makes more sense for John to be incidentally involved rather than the kind of driving force in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Really good shot. One of the best shots in the film incoming here.
I absolutely agree. The bit with the gate, where they're kind of behind the gate and Michael's swishing the knife through.
Yep.
And yeah, that's kind of the iconic shot of the whole film.
When you're talking about when he comes through the gate and he and Laurie land face to face with that window. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, on either side of the pane of glass. Yeah.
Yes. That is awesome. I have nothing but awesome things to say about that.
I think that is 100%. I think that the most visually satisfying moment in the film.
As a fan of the franchise, that's the moment. Out with the first film, that's the moment in the franchise to date. It's all completely fucked and undone in the next film again. But
of course. So to me, that's what kicks off. Now we're in Act 3. That is the moment that sort of kicks us into Act 3 territory.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I really dig it. Like it's a fun Act 3 for me. You know, the moment of like Michael coming down from the pipe.
Yeah, he's got incredible upper body strength.
He does. He does.
Like, that's some severe extreme core workout stuff.
Yep. That's what he's been doing the last 20 years.
Yeah, man. No, right though. That's like, but it's a really good moment when he like drops down from behind her. Yeah.
Again, conservatively, 10 or 12-inch blade.
Yeah. But yeah, like, so there's like a decent amount of hunt and chase stuff going on here, and this is a lot of the time, I think, in slashers, this is the kind of point where these things kind of tend to get away from me a little bit, and I don't think it particularly happened here. I think that there's enough kind of like twists and turns on there that I thought this was still pretty engaging, including Adam Arkin accidentally shooting LL Cool J.
Yeah. Again, like, grounded, authentic, unfortunate. I know some people take issue with the fact that LL Cool J doesn't actually die from that, but
he never dies. He never dies in anything.
Yeah, I mean, he's too cool to die.
Even in Deep Blue Sea, he's back at the end. He's fine.
Right.
I think that this is all pretty well done. Like you say, obviously, like, yeah, he's presumed dead and obviously reappears. And then you kind of get another kind of big individual moment where you see Laurie having the chance to escape.
Yeah.
Yes. And they're all ready to go, and Michelle Williams says, "Ms. Tate, come on!" And you just see the badass. You know, she realizes this is the moment she has to. She's been running from him for 20 years. She has to face him, and I just love her performance. I love what the music does there to put us in her head. I love her, you know, shutting the gate, breaking it closed with the rock, and it's just like Laurie versus Michael.
She screams. She keeps screaming his name over and over as well, trying to get his attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, by this point, Adam Arkin's dead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Right.
He's
we
pretty,
blew right past that, didn't we? Fucking hell.
He's pretty unceremoniously offed.
Absolutely.
It's a super satisfying moment though. I agree. So this is kind of all leading to your kind of final face-off between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And yeah, you've kind of got like a little bit more kind of hunt and chase, the hiding under the tables kind of thing. Ultimately, she gets the better of him, principally by stabbing him with a flagpole.
Yep.
Which is like pretty good stuff. Also manages to kind of use that as a kind of vehicle to throw him out of a window. stabs him multiple times, and then I think it's funny that like the recurrence of LL Cool J when he reappears is actually to discourage the double tap method to make sure that.
Oh right,
yeah,
right.
He comes back and he's like, he's dead. He's like, well, just let her check.
She needs this. Right. Give her this moment. She needs it.
Right. And then this is another thing that I love, because it's a turning on the head and a twisting of expectations, because the next scene right after that is a scene that we've seen so many times in slasher movies. Friday 2, Friday 3, I think, the Steve Miner ones, Friday 7. We see like the denouement of now the cops have all arrived.
Yeah.
The final girl is being let off, and it's like always in those movies, it is the last beat, and we see the ambulances drive off and the movie's over. But not in this movie.
No.
Fair, yeah.
And we think that it's going that way, but Laurie knows better. And she does that awesome moment when she threatens like the paramedics with a gun and drives away with Michael's supposed corpse in the back of the coroner van.
Yes.
Absolutely committing multiple felonies in the process.
Yep. But she needs it to complete her arc,
absolutely.
To face this demon.
And while she's driving, she knows that it's inevitable that he's going to come back. And she's watching.
Yes.
She's watching in the rearview mirror, watching the body bag which contains Michael and a knife. They seem to always do this in things. They bury or they take these killers away. It happened way back in episode 1 when we did Friday the 13th Part 5. I commented on why they would bury Jason, and even in a dream sequence, why they would bury Jason
with two machetes
and his mask on.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here. You would take that away. That would get put in a plastic bag, and that would be taken away. That would be carted off as evidence.
Yeah, there it is to hand though, and inevitably, he does reanimate. Air quotes, reanimates.
I find when he's trying to get out of that body bag very, very funny.
Huh? That never bothered me actually.
Every time I see it, it makes me giggle.
I see that, yeah.
Huh.
I
could have cut out. That would have been, I think, a better visual.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, but she eventually slams the brakes on and kind of like propels him out the window. Mm-hmm. And then, in an attempt to kind of run him over, rolls the ambulance over the edge of the hill face.
Well, just before that, I really like the bit where he's lying on the ground and she's saying, "Move, get up," and then he kind of sits up like the Undertaker and kind of stumbles to his feet. I really like that bit.
Yeah, it's great.
Because she knows
so hardcore.
Yeah, she knows he's always going to get up. He's always going to keep getting back up.
See, because we're kind of walking through this sequence and kind of really looking at the kind of bones of it, they do a lot of really good individual moments for kind of really driving home how much of a kind of like crucial standoff this is for her.
Yeah. It's ruined her whole life.
And her son's life, and now Adam Arkin's life. It's poisoned a lot of that one night of her life poisoned a lot of things, and now she has to deal with it.
But even before that, when she was 2 years old, her sister was murdered by her brother. She was taken into care. She was adopted away. So it has affected her whole life since birth.
That's right.
And I think the film does a pretty good job of constantly keeping you in mind of how high the stakes are.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, this isn't something that I had really considered until we started talking about this in kind of real detail. But I think that it does that pretty well. And so eventually, she hits him and rolls the ambulance down the hill face, and you get your final moment.
Yeah,
your final moments, should I say?
And of course, that final moment being that he reaches out towards her like he's asking for help.
Yeah, he's pinned to a tree.
He's pinned to a tree. He's pinned to a tree by the van.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And presumably his like spine is broken. He's barely clinging to life, and he reaches out towards her, and it seems for a second like she feels empathy for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But instead, she takes the axe and chops off his head.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it is left.
Pretty much.
Yep.
You get her there, head bouncing away, and then you get the kind of Shiro final shot of her. She's done it. She's buried this creature that's destroyed her whole life, and that's that. And then,
can you imagine if the saga had ended there?
And that's
If
that's a perfect
then,
way to end it. Perfect way to end it.
Wouldn't that have been amazing if they just let it go?
Yep.
Yeah, if they just called it there.
If they'd ended it there, and they'd taken Creed out of the end credits, and that was the last of Michael Myers.
I'd take it, but
I don't think we can stop here without touching on the fact that all of this is completely undone by Halloween Resurrection.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Preston, just for background, I hadn't seen Halloween Resurrection, and
You hadn't seen this?
No, this is the first watch. Both of them were, but basically, I watched this with Andy, and then I took his copy of Halloween Resurrection home with me, and effectively double billed them in the same evening.
Aha! All right.
And
good on you.
Yeah, thanks. We'll come to where I ended up on Halloween H2O. Halloween Resurrection, I find quite infuriating. One of the reasons for that is I think that it, in such a throwaway fashion, undoes so much of the more convincing narrative work that this film does.
Absolutely. I remember, Entertainment Tonight or something ran a piece on Halloween H2O, and there was a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis where she said, they said, "Would you come back for another one?" And she said, "Not for all the money in the world. This is it for me." And, it turns out that was probably, subterfuge, that it was in her contract that she would have to, if they made another one, come back for a prologue.
Yeah.
And it really does undo everything. Her death is 10 minutes into the movie after a 3-movie epic run. The way that she is dispatched by him is just so disappointing. I mean, I will say there is a cleverness to the way that they bring back Michael. How do you come back from the head chop off, right?
Yeah.
And there is a cleverness to that, but
do you think
it's not worth it?
No, it's not. No,
I agree. Yeah.
Do you think, or do you know, if that was already the plan?
So in that documentary, they basically, Mustafa Akkad said, the creative team said, "We want to kill Michael Myers. That's how we want this to culminate." And Mustafa Akkad said, "You can't kill Michael Myers. He's my cash cow."
Right.
And so supposedly Kevin Williamson came up with this solution where he said, we will stage it in such a way that if you want to make another one, you can show that he switched places with a paramedic.
Right. Okay.
So supposedly they had it in mind at the time of H2O.
Okay, so yeah, it wasn't made in the knowledge there would be another one, but it was made to accommodate the possibility of another one.
Correct.
Right.
And I know you mentioned that this Halloween H2O came out around the time that the kind of internet was kicking off, but Halloween Resurrection is an incredibly internet-savvy film.
Right. It is.
At the time when it was just going off the charts.
And it was 4 years later. It was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The same year that brought us Jason X, brought us Halloween Resurrection.
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
I think that I don't want to dig too much into Halloween Resurrection, but I think that it plays so much like a film from 2002. Like the references now are really funny. Like I feel like obviously it's all based around kind of like shooting this kind of like slightly real world type show, and they talk about how it's going to be like bigger than the Osbournes.
Yeah, but it's in the Myers house.
Yes,
isn't it?
Right.
Isn't it set in the Myers house?
I think so. Yeah. But I think a lot of things about that film are really maddening. Like I think going to the trouble of bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis and just like you say, dispatching of her in such a kind of like so early into the film, but in such a kind of bland throwaway kind of way is a bit of a slap in the face to to a lot of the hard work that came before it.
Absolutely, it is. I think in a vacuum there are some fun and entertaining aspects of Halloween Resurrection, but as a sequel to Halloween H2O, as a continuation of the Laurie Strode timeline, it is, I think, frustrating is the word that I would use as well, that you used just a minute ago.
And I think that again, we were talking about this in advance. We can't round out this conversation without talking about what's about to happen next. And obviously we've got Halloween 2018 coming out in a couple of months.
Yeah. And
Andy, as you pointed out, it's going to function as a direct sequel to the original. It's effectively going to wipe the slate clean.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I am really fascinated to see what happens, because I am such a huge fan of continuity and bringing back. So, okay, have you ever heard this little 30-second Seinfeld bit where he's talking about Americans who are rooting for sports teams? And his point is, the players change all the time.
Yeah.
The managers change all the time. When you're rooting for a sports team, you're pretty much rooting for the clothes.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a massive Seinfeld fan, so that I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you know that, right? Yeah. So I feel like in a lot of these, in Friday the 13th and Halloween in particular, we have so many changeovers in the creative teams, in the looks of the film, in the actors playing the slasher. Like, are we pretty much rooting for the mask? Is that what we're rooting for? To me, I don't feel that way, and I root for the human characters more than anything else.
Okay.
And so that's why I love this as a trilogy, H1, H2, and H2O as a trilogy, where it's about Jamie Lee's relationship with this mask, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so knowing that I'm such a huge fan of that, so now this new movie is asking me to say none of that happened, and what the buzz is that the take of the filmmakers on this new movie is so utterly compelling that it is worth saying that none of those things existed. And it remains to be seen if that's true or not. I can say this: I will be there on opening night.
Oh,
Same.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And I will be hoping to be blown away.
Yeah, I've mentioned before on this show, I've got a little bit of a problem with kind of just wiping the slate clean and going off on your own tangent and creating your own kind of canon. But yeah, I'm very much like what Preston just said. I will, and I said this when we talked about it, I will absolutely see it.
And I agree, I think, as well. I mean, you'll see it in the hope of being blown away. But I agree with you as well that I think that sometimes when something spawns multiple sequels and there's this kind of general acceptance of the fact that some of them aren't so hot kind of thing, I think that much rather than wipe the slate clean, I think I think it's more interesting to see people make compelling films and like from the kind of difficult circumstances of having to work your way out of sequels that aren't as good and sequels that maybe narratively aren't as interesting. I think that that's harder work than starting anew, and I think that that's why I would probably find that more interesting.
Yes, agreed. Something just this year that did it amazingly well was this show Cobra Kai.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a sequel to the Karate Kid movies, right?
Right.
And, Karate Kid 2 and to a greater extent Karate Kid 3 are not the greatest entries in that canon. Right. And yet that sequel does not ignore them. Uh-oh, sorry. It honors all of those things, but forges its own path, and that was a narrative needle to thread, and they did it beautifully. These filmmakers have chosen to go a different way. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, like I say, I think that what we all have in common about it is that we'll all go see it and we'll all hope for the best.
Yeah.
So, Mitch just mentioned a second ago that perhaps some of the films in the franchise aren't particularly great. Where did you come down in Halloween H2O?
Preston, what I would say is that this is one of the more convincing pitches that we've had on the show.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I would say that.
Okay.
I thought that this was. I think that this film. I thought that this film was fine. I think that you've emphasized a lot of the hard work that it does to uphold certain things, and a lot of the ways that it kind of had to respond to the way that slashers were changing post-Scream to kind of subvert people's expectations, and by its nature it had to be a little smarter than your average, and I think that that's probably something that I didn't necessarily give it credit for on first viewing. So I would say that, honestly, this is one of the best sells that we've had. From my point of view anyway, I would say that I have taken a lot out of this.
Nice.
There you go. Andy?
And what about Andy? Yeah.
I find Halloween H2 a little bit bland. Even among the kind of the other slasher films that Dimension were putting out around about the same time, same writers, I feel that Halloween H2O struggles to keep up with them in any real way, and it's only these moments between Jamie Lee and Michael, I think, that elevate it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I find it quite humdrum.
Yeah, I see the point of view. I see it. I understand it more now than I did before upon this revisit. I guess just for me, it is that Jamie Lee arc that I guess I apologize for so much of that blandness with her, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's totally fair as well. I mean, I think that maybe, and again, now you've said it, and now we've kind of framed the discussion from that angle. I think that a lot of what you take out of it kind of rides on exactly how much stock you put in that and how it handles that.
For sure.
And I think that you're right. I mean, and it's interesting to hear you say that on this rewatch. You know, you spotted a couple of things that hadn't bothered you before that did. Mm-hmm. But I suppose that if that element of it, if you think that that's well handled, and that's what you're really there for, then it can kind of hide a multitude of sins.
Yeah. Right.
Going back to what we said earlier about what could have been before Jamie Lee Curtis signed on. To me personally, after Part 6 and Paul Rudd, I've got no real desire to particularly see another Halloween sequel, because it's going to be largely the same. So I think, and I certainly have no desire to see a straight to DVD Dimension film like they did with the Hellraiser films. But I think that this was the best road they could have taken. And I think in that regard, it absolutely works. I just wish they hadn't made another one. Absolutely.
Preston, before we wrap up, I want to take a little minute to talk about Ruin Me.
Yes, sir.
Which is available now in the UK. I believe it's billed as a Shudder exclusive. It's available now, and I think that was as of, I believe, the end of July.
Yep. July 19th in the US, August 9th in the UK.
Right. So it's only been like a week then.
It's time. What I would say is we met. No, I didn't meet. Sorry, I apologize. I was at the screening.
Awesome.
I was at Frightfest of Ruin Me, and I had a great time with it. I haven't had a chance to revisit it yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. But so like I say, it's available now, and it's a very new arrival in the UK. So if you want to take a sec to talk about it and just kind of let the listeners know a little bit about it, now's the time.
Yeah, so Ruin Me is my first feature film as a director. I co-wrote it with Trista Bissett, who's been my screenwriting partner for a number of years. And we set out to make a horror drama that is masquerading in the trappings of a slasher film.
Right.
So Ruin Me begins in many ways in the way that slasher films begin with a group of characters who are set up to go to an isolated setting, which is this extreme haunted event they've signed up for called Slasher Sleepout.
Yep.
But once they're out there, things begin to go wrong, and we start to question if Slasher Sleepout is a game or if there is something more going on. And what we were really passionate about with Ruin Me was doing this all through the lens of a single character. Sort of our final girl is announced in the first frame of the movie as being our protagonist, and every event in the film is experienced through her point of view. And as she gets deeper and deeper into Slasher Sleepout, the drama of what's unfolding becomes more and more personal to her, and that's the movie. That's Ruin Me, and it's something that I'm really excited and proud of. We did world premiere at Frightfest last year, and I'm so happy to be on Shudder as a Shudder exclusive. I think the right eyeballs will discover us there.
Yeah, definitely.
And it is my number one desire for people to go in understanding that it is a slasher in some ways, but also a horror drama in other ways.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really smart film. I had a great time with it. I'd recommend it to everyone listening. I'd go check that out.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you very much.
Preston, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Hell yeah. Awesome.
So, just before you go, where can people get in touch with you? How can people follow you and follow developments?
Absolutely.
And what do you have coming up?
Yeah, we're really active on Twitter, at Ruin Me Movie on Twitter. I'm at Preston DEF on Twitter. I'm going to be working on the second season of a show called Manhunt coming up. And Trista and I have written another horror film that we are just finishing the script now, and we're going to be putting it together over the fall to hopefully shoot next year, and that is called After the Summer.
Awesome. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. And hopefully I'll see you guys back at Frightfest one of these days. I'm so jealous you're going this year. Have so much.
Yeah. But yeah, Preston, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hell yeah, guys.
Thank you, man.
That guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, I feel like a bit of a doofus. But that's okay. It's not the first time, won't be the last.
I was gonna say no. It's a very familiar feeling for me as well. But no, Preston De Francis of Ruin Me fame, stopping by, and I would say making a hearty defense of Halloween H20, but also just flexing some real knowledge muscle in the process.
Yeah, it was energetic, and I like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he came in ready, which I always appreciate. So we're just about done for another one, I guess.
Yeah.
But a big thank you to Preston for joining us, and of course, a big thank you to you guys for listening. And don't forget that you can check out Ruin Me now in the UK. On Shudder as of August 9th. And July 19th, I believe you said in the States.
I think it might have been.
Yeah, so it's
basically it's there.
It's there.
That's all we need to know now.
Yeah.
The dates are inconsequential now, it's there.
It's very true. Yeah. But get on it. It's a good film, it's worth your time. And hopefully when the time comes, we'll maybe see him again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So it's time for us to go, I guess. But if you want to get in touch, you can do. You can get in touch on Facebook and Instagram. That's Strong Language Violent Scenes. You can also tweet us at StrongViolentPC or email stronglanguageviolentscenes@gmail.com.
Yes, absolutely. And however you're listening, there might be better ways to do that. And you can hear us at Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podbean. And if you do listen to us on iTunes, please subscribe and rate and review, because it really does help us a lot.
So, don't forget that at the time of listening...
Yeah. This is going out on a Friday morning.
It's going out on a Friday morning, so... Well, I'm at Frightfest.
I'm at work.
That's very true.
But I'm on the way. I'm coming down.
Yeah, and on that note, we will both be at Frightfest this weekend, and we're currently in the process of figuring out... We'll be back on Monday.
Yeah.
With a mini-sode. We're just kind of figuring out the logistics of that.
Yeah, but we would definitely put out a mini-sode on Monday somehow, to whatever level of quality, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I just want to preface this by saying that the mini-sode that comes your way on Monday morning might be slightly erratic.
Yeah, also adjust your expectations given that there tends to be a fair amount of drinking done at Frightfest.
Oh, wow, I had not considered that. That is fair. Yeah. But one way or another, by hook or by crook, we'll be back Monday morning, 8 a.m. BST. Join us then if you can. In the meantime, don't forget, if you want to stay handcuffed to your dead brother, that's fine, but you're not dragging me along. Good night.
Good night. You've been listening to Strong Language and Violent Scenes with Andy Stewart and Mitch Bain. Strong Language and Violent Scenes theme by Mitch Bain. Production and artwork by Andy Stewart. Find us on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts and Podbean.